Welcome to Construction Champions Podcast, where we are burning the house down and rebuilding it twice a week. I'm your host, Nussbaum, and I am here to help you become the champion that you're meant to be. Along with our amazing guests along the way, we will provide you with the resources, the latest and greatest. You will sit down with disruptors in the construction industry. And my goal from day one has always been to change the mindset around the construction industry. No more where we let the 3% of bad apes dictate the entire reputation of our industry. Welcome back, Construction Champions. I'm your conversation facilitator, Ron Nussbaum, and I have the amazing honor of talking to industry experts, leaders in and outside of the construction industry to take on the subject of what makes a construction champion and how we can be the champion that we're meant to be in the construction industry. And today is no different. I have an amazing guest here with us. Paul, it is fantastic to have you on the show today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on, Ron. Looking forward to the conversation.
So am I, but before we dive into it, why don't you introduce yourself to all the construction champions listening out there?
Sure. So I'm Paul Kealey, CEO and founder of EkoBuilt, a passive house company. We have a certified passive house product that we deliver right across North America, anywhere in Canada or the United States that is looking for an affordable, certified passive home, ultimately the world's healthiest home. We're there to provide it. Ultimately, the mission of our company is to provide passive house at an accessible level that might not otherwise be possible for people. And we really think that anyone with a reasonable budget to build should afford to build passive. So we have an affordable model. And when we look at the small incremental cost it takes to build passive, extra cost is instantly offset with the savings in utilities. But it's what, I'm really, I live and breathe passive house and really want to make that accessible to anyone and everyone.
Awesome. I love it. Before we dive in here, can you explain what passive housing is to any of our listeners that might not understand that?
For sure. So a passive home ultimately is a construction model. Many people have not heard of the term, but similar in the sense that it's a construction model, comparing it to an Energy Star home or a LEED house or a net zero home that more people are becoming familiar with, but ultimately a construction model that results in the world's most energy efficient house. And we didn't start as a passive home company. We've been building passive for about the past 10 years. Our company's been around for approximately 25 years. We were in the timber frame log home world for a number of years, but have always been attracted to a passive home due to its energy conservation, energy savings capabilities. I think, if there's one thing that anyone has in common living in any type of house is we all hate the utility companies, right? How much energy has increased in cost over the years. And a passive home solves that problem instantly. It's a type of house that reduces the energy or heating and cooling demand, I should say, approximately 80% when you compare the home to more typical building code standard. So one of the basics of the construction model that instantly attracted me is the fact that it has the same energy savings capabilities regardless of where the home is built in the world. It's not a Canadian or an American standard or an Australian standard. It's an international standard. It's a type of house that applies equally well to heating predominant climates that would be in more northern climates or southern climates far away from the equator. But it's also a type of house that is equally beneficial, sometimes even more beneficial in tropical climates that have very intensive cooling loads. from an air conditioning perspective.
Awesome, man. Well, now I'm going to ask the $1,000,000 question. Now that we got that out of the way and everybody understands exactly what it is you do, what makes a construction champion?
I think what makes a construction champion is a builder that is solving some of the building problems that still exist and still are lingering from past types of housing that shouldn't really be built anymore. There's a lot of problems in the construction industry. Air tightness is a big problem. Thermal envelope, having a significant amount of thermal protection for any house. And the biggest standard design feature that any house can instantly go from a house full of thermal bridges to one that's thermal bridge free is simply by adding a significant or a climate zone specific, I would say, amount of insulation and continuous insulation that's surrounding the home. For those that aren't aware, general construction, the way a house is constructed from a wood frame perspective, we're building homes as far south as Georgia and as far north as Alaska or the Canadian territory of Nunavut the same way, a 2x6 insulated wall. Why is R22 insulation as satisfactory as it is in these southern climates and northern climates, the extremes? So a certain amount of thermal envelope, there's a lot of problems there. We really do need to build a general house to be more climate specific rather than a type of house that should be considered adequate anywhere in the world. The health qualities of a home that mostly stem from a type of house that is still being built vapor closed. Homes need to be built vapor open. It's probably the single biggest problem that we are dealing with in the construction world. And healthy indoor air quality, another big problem. Codes are starting to evolve and demand fresh air systems, which would either be known as an HRV or an ERV. But you can still build a house in most areas of North America, most areas of the world, not put in a fresh air machine. But indoor air quality, we spend over 80 to 90% of our time indoors. A third of our lives are spent in the bedroom. So indoor air quality, really a lot of problems that need to be solved around that component alone. So heck, man, you're a construction champion if you're working at solving one of these problems.
Yeah, and they're all solvable, but like you said, they're not the standard. So there's this disconnect on doing it, even though it's what people might want, but code is always a funny thing because it seems like code stuff, the stuff that should change never does. And then stuff that you're like, this is crazy, is the stuff that changes.
That's right. Yeah. When you look at the building code, this is really, the overarching presumption is the building code is there to protect our health and to protect us living in the home. When it comes down to it, the house or the building code is concerned about one thing only. It's the health and safety. It's concerned about not falling down, not falling on your head or your family's head, really mostly concerned with the structure. But health is really the single biggest component that's missing here. All the problems that I was speaking about with the construction world in general, the way that we're still building homes. Most builders are going to follow the code. You cannot blame any home builder because the training that home builders go through, carpenters go through, is based off of the codes. And the code is just concerned with that one single biggest reason and not falling down over top of your head. And we have the presumption it's there to protect our health, but there is no part of the building code that is concerned about your health at all.
Yeah, and I think one of the hard parts from a builder's perspective is anytime you start to do stuff that is different, you have to be able to explain it to the inspectors. There starts to become this where if you don't fully understand it in a way that they were and be able to explain it in a way they can understand it, it starts to become a problem, and it can cause delays, and you have to wait for stuff just because you're doing something that, even though it's beyond or on top of what the code is, they want to understand what's happening because they look at, could this be something that violates code? And I think for builders, that can be a real put off to be somebody that's doing new stuff, the out of the box stuff that actually moves it forward, is because now they're like, every time we do this, I have to have a conversation with the inspector of the city or the county on what exactly we're doing, why, and how this benefits everybody.
That's right. It's sometimes a challenge to get an alternative building through the building department. It's important to put what we do as a company is we make sure we put an engineer stamp on the plan so that there's no concerns about a structure, because ultimately, with respect to building codes, the municipalities take the liability or assume the liability for that building. So having an engineer stamp to approve the structure is there to deal with general building inspectors or building approvals, but there does need to be some regulatory change in order for real change to happen, in order for builders to automatically build in a better way. There just need to be some regulatory changes. Now, one of the great things that's happened just in the past few years in North America and really the greater world is over 150 countries have committed with mandated legislation. So meaning actually countries have to follow through with net zero building codes. Now, what I guess is a little bit unfortunate there is net zero codes aren't required to come into play or become official until the year 2050. So it's still over 20 years away, but mandated legislation is coming. Building codes are on a progressive change towards 2050, and most codes are changing approximately 10%, becoming 10% more energy efficient every time the code changes, which is approximately every 4 years or so, up to the point of 2050, where a net zero code will become an automatic. I bring in net zero to the conversation because ultimately one of the biggest benefits of a passive house is due to its energy conservation qualities. It's also the best net zero home. So a type of home that can produce the equivalent amount of energy as it consumes for all heating, all cooling, all appliance use with very small solar arrays. Solar systems that can go on top of a roof and really only need approximately 300 to 400 square feet of roof space to produce all the equivalent amount of energy. So, regulatory change, we need that to happen, but there's no reason not to build this way today. So many health benefits, and but the biggest benefit for a lot of our customers is really reducing that utility bill down to an absolute minimum and getting rid of the gas bill, getting rid of the propane bill. No one likes spending $1,000, $2,000 on filling up those propane tanks a couple times a year is one of those big pain points that we are hearing about from our customers.
I've been there. I have been there where we had propane, and it is. I lived in the northern parts when we had propane. In wintertime was that $1,200 a month to fill that propane tank was always just a pain in the butt. And it was like, there's got to be a better way, but where we were at, there was not. So can these be dropped in anywhere? Do you have to have power? Could this be like an answer to off-grid properties where you don't even have the opportunity for electricity? How does that work?
Yeah, so great question. Like ultimately for for everyone out there that really hates the utility companies, that's the solution. Get off grid. And a number of our customers have done exactly that for personal reasons. But one of the benefits of your passive home is it's also a type of house similar to smallest net zero system. It results in the smallest off-grid package as well. So minimizes the inverter requirement, minimizes the solar panels again, minimizes the battery storage that someone would need. Also for reasons of power outage, for houses that are connected to the grid, one of the trends that seem to be becoming worse and worse with changing weather patterns is the power's going down more often. One of the big benefit that a passive house has is it's ultimately a type of home that's built like a thermos. So it's a type of house that's able to result in a really stable interior environment, no drafts, no temperature swings under normal conditions. But under a power outage, it's a type of house that's going to maintain room temperature, even just with some minor sunlight coming through the windows. It's a type of house that has even been known to be well above freezing if it's never heated at all through the course of the winter. Now, I had some direct personal experience there, experiencing being away from a house or the passive home in the wintertime under what's called polar vortex conditions, ultimately freezing cold temperatures where there's little sunlight and it's snowing. I observed the temperature dropping, but not dropping any lower than the equivalent of 14 degrees Celsius, which is approximately 50 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe. When we all heard of the problems that Texas had a few years ago when the power dropped, the Gulf Stream dipped down in the middle of the winter and caused millions of dollars. I think it was even in the billions. Austin, Texas is where I remember people's water pipes were bursting less than 24 hours because a lot of these houses had really minimal insulation. But apart from insulation, the one single biggest factor that makes a house efficient is the air tightness. This again goes back to one of the biggest problems with the building code requiring a certain level of air tightness, but not requiring that air tightness to be tested. But it's a type of house, the reasons of power failure, that can really protect any home built anywhere in North America. And for those that are interested in off-grid, it's a type of house that's going to reduce in the smallest and the most inexpensive off-grid system that's required.
I love it. What size houses are we talking here for the listeners? What is possible? What are the minimum, the maximums of what you do? I guess a follow-up question that I also had to that is do you build these or do you work with builders in areas?
We work with builders, we work with homeowners, where our biggest value proposition is providing a material package, a weather-tight shell material package that ultimately consists of prefabricated wall panels, roof panels, windows and doors that is when put together, becomes a certified passive house system. So a house that's guaranteed to reach certain energy thresholds, and we provide all the energy modeling data to confirm what the house is going to use. It's also a house that's guaranteed to be healthy, guaranteed to be mold free. This is ultimately our biggest value proposition. So working with builders all across North America, our customers are ultimately homeowners that go out and find a carpenter or go out and find a builder. We are just really providing one component of the house, that weather tight shell package, but it's ultimately the single biggest component that results in construction projects taking a long time to build, because most houses with weather delays will go through the weather tight shell construction phase. Will take approximately 3 months of time for most houses to be built through this stage of construction, and we can reduce that time down to 1 week with the prefab system. But there are houses that can range in size from anywhere from 400 or 500 square feet right up to 3,000, 4,000, even 6,000 square feet for larger multifamily projects. What's interesting about a passive house from a heating and cooling perspective, a passive home that's 3,000 square feet will be generally the same cost to heat and cool compared to a much smaller home that could be 1,000 square feet or 1,500 square feet in size. It's generally, when we look at the heat loss area, the perimeter, the lineal footage of the wall assembly and the roof assembly, and the storage of the air inside the home. The air is really a storage medium for the energy. Since the house is built like a thermos, anything inside the home that's producing heat, whether it's from the appliances, the refrigerator, the clothes dryer, our bodies are known to be the equivalent of a 100-watt light bulb. Anything that's producing heat inside the home is part of those internal heat gains that reduce impact on the heating system in the wintertime. But whether that passive house is 1,000 square feet or 3,000 square feet, generally the home costs the same to heat and cool through the course of the year with an air source heat pump. And that when we translate that to dollars, most people are going to make sense of what does it actually cost. Less than $200 to $250 a year is that dollar value we're talking about, which is why it generally is the same cost regardless of size of passive home, because it's very little cost is actually attributed to the heating and cooling system. 90% of the cost of the utility bill or the electric bill is really dedicated for the appliances and the appliances only. How often you're using those kitchen appliances or doing laundry.
That's fascinating. I've never thought about everything that happens in a house and how much heat is created from all of that and how that can affect the utilities and what you actually use if it wasn't just escaping, if it was staying in there. That fascinates me. I've literally never thought about that. So
it does sound a little bit unbelievable, and with respect to our company, building log homes, which is ultimately the epitome or the opposite of a passive house, a house that uses a substantially more amount of energy in heating season compared to a home that uses the least amount. It was a little bit, even unbelievable for us, but all of the proof was there, all the data was there, all the examples were there. We were hoping all we had to do was build it, and we did that, and it was a bit of an aha moment for us, building it, seeing how it works, really stepping inside and breathing that clean, fresh air, and going through a heating season where we've seen how energy efficient the house is. The amount of cost that it takes for a heat pump, an air source heat pump to operate is approximately 1 kilowatt hour for every hour. It's a house that is heated for an average of 3 hours a day from the middle of November to the middle of February in most climates that are experiencing winter. Houses in more tropical climates, would people experience the same, comparing to a conventional home that might have to be cooled 12 hours a day. Your passive house only has to be cooled really 1, 2, 3 hours a day, depending on how hot it is outside. So that drastic reduction using an air source heat pump, using that source of heating and cooling energy, but since it's being distributed into a thermal bridge free, airtight, draft free, thermos-like environment, the house holds the heat. It holds that cool air, also coming out of the air conditioner, and all you really have to do, anyone has to do is build it themselves, and experiencing it is really a great pleasure.
yeah, being in the southern climate where in the summertime that AC runs 24 hours a day, it seems like, I can imagine that it helps with the wear and tear on your units, the heat, the AC, because that stuff's not running all the time, wearing it down. So there's another kind of offset there where that stuff will end up lasting longer because it's not under load all the time, I would have to assume.
That's an interesting point. Yes, the mechanical equipment naturally lasts longer because it's running less.
Yeah.
And, we're a Canadian company. We talk about the benefits of heating, but Canadian climates, they're lands of extremes, similar to most of the northern part of the United States, right? Freezing cold winters and then boiling hot summers. But where passive house is also taking off significantly is in Australia. They're building passive in Australia, learning about a lot of these communities in Australia where the nighttime temperatures don't drop below 30 degrees Celsius. So like a very extreme hot climate is experiencing or learning about the benefits to build passive, just like climates that are more focused on reducing the heating demand in the wintertime is proof that it has equal benefits anywhere you build, right across the world. And it's a much more sustainable home because of that. But sustainability aside, energy is not getting any cheaper. And this would have been a totally different conversation 20 years ago when energy was real cheap. And it really caused our switch as a company from a log home timber frame company into a passive company. When we built our original demonstration home 25 years ago, that was a log home. It was heated with an electric boiler, and the cost to operate that electric boiler was $50 a month in the wintertime. By the time 2012 rolled around, 2015, that had translated into a $500 electric bill every month in the wintertime. And that's really what caused the switch, where we reevaluated that question: what is the best sustainable home? And it's just going to get worse. And but this is the really interesting part of a passive home. It can bring that utility bill back down to the point where it was 15 to 20 years ago.
I love that. And I think one of the other things that this helps combat is, because I hear it all the time, is people are not impressed with how new homes are being built. A lot of people think they're being built very cheap, not utilizing the best material. It just, there's this perception right now that houses are just being thrown up. They're not of quality, and people would rather buy a house from like the 90s because they feel like it's built better. I believe something like this helps change that perspective on that for homeowners and people that are building houses, of what it's actually being built out of.
That's right. The biggest misconception I touched on earlier is that the new home is going to solve people's problems that they have been experiencing in their existing home or home from the past. And the irony behind that is that the better you build a house on paper, meaning the more energy efficient, let's say the home is on paper from an energy modeling perspective, the more high performance a builder might try and make the home. It's also a type of house that could possibly be impacted from a health perspective. A type of house, a high performance home, can result in a type of home that is creating a significant unhealthy condition in the home because of its better air tightness. If it's airtight to the point where it's reducing the energy demand on the home, but it's also holding all of that moisture and built with a non-open permeable or a non-vapor open system, it's a type of house that's going to result in a lot of big health impacts. There's some stats out, there's some studies that have been done in the past 5 years where it's known now most houses, new houses that are built, up to 20% of the houses have mold problems within the first 5 years of occupancy. And it's because really going back to the original question, the building codes haven't evolved demanding vapor open systems. And someone might think, listening to this, it's totally wrong. Our building code requires air barriers that are referred to as house wraps on the outside of the home that are vapor open. But what's ironic about that, the house wrap is vapor open, true, but it's going over top of an OSB sheathing or a plywood that is the opposite of vapor open. We use an OSB product in our system as a vapor barrier. OSB sheets, plywood sheets are considered vapor retarders. They hold moisture. So the only reason why a house built new, the only reason that home would not have a mold problem is because it would ultimately need to be a leaky home, really have a certain amount of air leakage to the point where all that vapor is able to get through that house wrap. But I always think of the young carpenter, graduates from school, wants to build the tightest home, do a really good job. And that house, if that home is built with building code systems that aren't proven to be vapor open, it's a house that's going to result in a big health implication. And a lot of people are really, this coming from COVID, where more people were forced to spend more time in home, is really what has been part of shedding the light on the sick building syndrome that is more prevalent now with newer homes. So for anyone out there looking at building new, really, asking your home builder these questions: how is my house going to be vapor open? Ensure fresh air, ensure high indoor air quality, ensure that it's within a healthy humidity range, not too dry, not too humid, so that you're able to enhance your health, not hinder it. Being inside the home is really some big questions need to be answered there for your builder. A lot of great builders out there, but unfortunately, most building systems that are on the market integrated into building codes aren't ones that are going to protect your health.
Yeah, and I've heard the over trying to make a house as tight as you possibly can, especially with the rise of spray foam and stuff. And we've all heard horror stories of where you seal a home up too much and the complications that can come with that. And you're trying to do it for the right reasons, but the back end, it can actually cause adverse side effects. You got to have a balance.
That's right. You do need there. Even at the passive house level, it does assume a little bit of air leakage, but the whole concept around indoor air quality, having a fresh air system, and minimizing the toxins that are either generated from interior finish material or building envelope material. Well, when you look at making a home tight, so we believe the tighter you make the home and the more a machine can manage that indoor air quality, it's much easier for someone to control, or you ultimately have control of your own indoor air quality in that sense. But it really leads towards that question leads towards one of the biggest problems with a house that most people aren't aware of. Most homes, the way that they're built with ultimately housing systems from an HVAC perspective that are designed around exhaust and not fresh air, is what puts a house into a constant state of unhealthy condition. When you look at the way most homes are built, in the sense that washrooms require vents to really dissipate that humidity from showers, vents in kitchens to deal with humidity coming off of the stove, a vent even from a clothes dryer. Houses, the way houses are typically built, they're in a constant state of exhaust, and that results in a constant state of depressurization. And this is, one of the biggest health impacts with spray foam leads to this situation. A conventional home built with spray foam in a constant state of depressurization, what happens? That house wants to constantly make up that fresh air, and that makeup is coming through all the gaps in the cracks in the building envelope, and it's ultimately delivering all of these toxins to the indoor air environment. All these toxins coming from the building envelope itself. They could be coming from outside if there's a forest fire condition happening or there's poor air quality happening outside the home, that's coming inside the house as well. And a house that a conventional home, even that has a fresh air system built into it, with all these toxins and state of depressurization, most fresh air machines are not able to guarantee healthy fresh air because there's simply too much toxins there for the home to deal with in general. So we feel it's important to build tight, but you have to have you have to have a fresh air system that is designed also for that type of house.
I love it, man. I love it. You bring a wealth of knowledge to this. This has been a fantastic conversation today. For all of our listeners, if they wanted to connect with you, learn more about everything that you do, where's the best place for them to do that?
The best place is our website. So going to ekobuilt.com/podcast though. So ekobuilt.com/podcast for all of our listeners. We have a lot of information for you. We have, most importantly, a list of questions you can ask your builder that you can download right from that page. We also have access to over 80 designs that range anywhere from 400 square feet right up to 4,500 square feet. So, and there's also pricing attached to those designs. So you can see what model might be feasible for you to build over another. And we also have a cash incentive for those that might be listening that are actually designing their own home to build or have that dream of building sometime in the next couple of years. We have a cash incentive for you, taking a certain amount of dollars off your chosen house package if you're ready to move forward. So ekobuilt.com/podcast is where you're going to find all this info.
Awesome, Paul. Well, thank you for taking the time and being on the show today.
Thanks, Ron. You have an amazing show. And, thanks again for having me on. It's been great.
Awesome. All right, construction champions, another episode in the bag. Well, I think we talk about thinking outside of the box on here all the time. And what is the next evolution for the construction industry? And we bring on somebody like Paul, who is at the frontier of this, leading the way on what the future of the construction industry can look like from a building perspective. And not just saying, hey, this is how we've always done it, so we're just going to work within those realms. Actually taking his business and reincorporating it into what he sees the future to be, to actually go have an impact on the construction industry, to challenge what we believe are the norms and the status quos. That's what Construction Champions podcast is based on. That's how we go out there and we start to change the mindset around the construction industry. So I absolutely love everything that Paul is doing. Go check out his site, learn more about him. What's the worst that could happen? Do you have an innovative idea in your mind that completely changes the construction industry one day? That's all we got to do. That's how we go out and we, like I said, change the mindset around the construction industry. So until next time, be the champion you're meant to be.